Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, peopleofdistinction.org for more info, or you can always email me directly at benji@alcoleenterprises.com. And we are very excited to showcase this next guest here on our network, so sit back, strap in, and get ready for a wonderful ride. And on the line with us today, we have William J. Pardue. And we're going to be discussing his wonderful book that he co-wrote with his son, Patrick. Now, the book itself is called Wolf Creek. And it's a true story based upon William's experience being a camp counselor. And we're going to go into all of the nuances in the interview, guys. But keep in mind, this book is available for purchase through Amazon, Barnes & Noble. But if you want to gather everything that Bill has to offer, do yourself a favor and head directly to his personal site. And that is wjpbooks.com. Once you're there, you'll find out more information on William himself, more information on this fantastic book, Wolf Creek, as well as find hyperlinks not only to take you to the purchasing page for that book, but also the other 3 books that Bill has written to date as well, one of which is called Why God. The next one is Visionary Perspectives Reincarnated. Lastly, A Mystic Guide to Spiritual Evolution, all of which are available through his personal site, wjpbooks.com, as well as Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And I will say, Bill was brought to our network, People of Distinction, today by some of the best publishers in the business, Sweet Spire Literature Management. So if you have a book that you'd like moved, give yourself the best gift you could possibly give and move it through Sweet Spire. And you can find out more information on them at sweetspireliterature.com. And listen, people, it's an absolute pleasure to have Bill here on the line. As I mentioned, it's a true story based upon his experience as a counselor. Okay. Now, the overall story is all about maturation, right? It's the strength of the human spirit, the cruelty of humanity, and the power of love and friendship. Now, what I love so much about that, and that was an excerpt that I took when I was researching, but what I love about that message in and of itself, isn't that just a depiction of life? I mean, when we're growing, when we're going through our journey, there's a lot of maturing that happens. You're going to meet people from all walks of life. Not all of them will be nice in every particular occasion. And through the relationships that you have, be it friendships, be it significant others, or familial relationships, that is really, through that unity is how we overcome a lot of obstacles. Not always, but a lot of times, having that support system is really the key that you need. And I'm really excited, and I'm looking forward to this because A, that's such a great message. But B, just to have a book to add to the shelves, because listen, people, I don't know about you, but after the 2.5 years going on what feels like 40 years that we've been dealing with this pandemic and the variations of lockdown that we've all experienced, I've been yearning for a book to just get lost in, right? A journey to take me outside of the confinement that I've found myself stuck in. And this is the perfect exit strategy. And Bill's the expert. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Bill, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you for being a guest. How are you today?
Thank you for having me.
Of course, absolutely. Listen, we're very much looking forward to this. As I mentioned, there's something about true stories that always raise the stakes, right? It just heightens things. And at least for me, it always is much more engaging. So, A, I'm looking forward to that. But again, that underlying message, I think, is something we can all get behind. So I'm really excited to hear about all of that. But before we go into the book, Bill, start by telling our listening audience a little bit more about yourself and your background, please.
Yes. I am currently an attorney. I have been for 30 years. Family law attorney, which is probably the toughest law to practice, but it's also the most rewarding just because of, what you can do for families. Before I was an attorney, I had a contracting company, a construction company, a small one. And I did that for 10 years. Before that, I was a social worker. I have a master's degree in social work. I worked for the American Red Cross Disaster Services and traveled around the world for them to disaster sites. I went to the North Pole. I went to the equator. I went to Central America for them, actually for the International Red Cross, to write a disaster plan for the Central American countries after I had written one for the American Red Cross. And I also raised money for charities for the United Way in Los Angeles and for the Red Cross in Arizona. And the first job I had was, of course, with these boys out in the woods. And that was when I graduated from the University of Texas, Austin, with a degree in zoology.
You know, Bill, a couple of things here. First and foremost, we're absolutely going to have you back on the network. Not to discuss this book in further detail, not to discuss any other books that you've written or will write, just to discuss your background, man, because my goodness, is it impressive and very eclectic. I mean, your experiences vary tremendously, and I'm sure you have stories for days, and we would love to hear about them. Now, my follow-up question, Bill, and I wasn't initially planning on going here, but after that introduction, how could I go anywhere else? I got to talk about inspiration, man. I mean, you talked about being involved in the Red Cross. You talked about, now you're, of course, a lawyer. I mean, social work. Your background is very eclectic, but none of which have to do with creative writing. Now, I'm sure all of them had a lot of writing specific to that particular job. But where does the love for creative writing come from? What inspired you to write this book, Wolf Creek?
Well, I would tell people the story after I went through this and said, that's an amazing story. You really need to write it. So I finally sat down. I'd never written a book before, and I did it longhand. And I had that was probably back in 1990. And I finally got it typed up, did the manuscript, sent it to the publishers. And and so I'm being perfectly honest. But they got back to me. They said, the story is absolutely amazing, but you're not a very good writer. So
well, there you go.
They said, we've tried everything we can to reform the writing, but it's not going to work for us. So I was lucky enough to have a son who got into writing, got a creative writing degree. And I said, look, I have this book, and maybe you could help me with it. And that's what he did. He helped me with it. He made it readable.
There you go. Fantastic. So it was your son's doing that really brought this over the mountaintop, right? I mean, you brought it the majority of the way there. You needed him to help finish the race, though.
That's right.
That's beautiful. Bill,
he dragged me over with him.
Listen, no one can appreciate that more than myself, right? Of course, everybody knows my father, Al Cole, and it's a family affair here, and we know that there are moments where it's not so easy to work with family members. So I definitely have a profound appreciation for what you and your son have been able to accomplish, man. Nothing but continued success to you and your son there. Bill,
let's say there has to be a lot of patience involved.
Oh,
right?
Of course. Yeah.
Especially from the father.
Absolutely. Yeah, because, the relationship has always been father-son. And then to transfer that now to be partnerships and almost equals to a sense, that can ruffle some feathers and lead to some turbulent times. But we've made it through. I've been working with my father for a number of years now. It's fantastic. I wouldn't have it any other way. And I'm sure you feel the same by working with your son.
Yeah, it's a great experience. And my other son worked with me in the office for 8 years. So it's great working with family and with sons, especially for dads.
Of course. Bill, without further ado, let's jump into the book, Wolf Creek. Tell us a little bit more about the narrative.
Well, like I said earlier, I graduated from the University of Texas, Austin in 1971. I'd been studying geology for 3 years because I wanted to be a geologist. And it didn't work out. So the last year I chose a topic, a subject that I could get out in. I got a degree in zoology. And I had, what do you do with a degree in zoology? So I just happened to find a job on a board at the university, and it was for a wilderness counselor they didn't really give a full description of what it was for because nobody would have gone and applied for it. But it was for a wilderness camping program, mountain climbing, canoeing, backpacking, the whole bit. And I said, wow, I'm really an outdoor guy. This sounds like somebody's going to pay me to go camping and canoeing and all that stuff. I said, oh, well. sign up for that. So I had an interview with the social worker, and they hired me. And after he hired me, he told me a little bit about the boys. So this was a camp. These were boys mainly from south side of Chicago, had been involved in gangs, had gone through the entire juvenile system in Illinois and been rejected from all of them eventually. They were sent to the boys' ranch in Texas where they thought they could handle them, and they could not handle them there either. So they came up with this brilliant idea of buying 20 acres out in the middle of nowhere in East Texas, no water, no power, nothing but scrub pine and sand. And they took them out there and they dumped us all together and left. And that's
figure it out.
That's what the job was about. It was basically warehousing these boys far enough from civilization where they weren't going to hurt anybody. And it was our job, the counselors, to keep them from killing each other.
Wow. Well, Bill, hearing you talk about that, it's funny because I when I was doing the research for your book, one book that I remember reading when I was much, much younger, I was probably a teenager at this point, it was a book called Holes. And they made it actually into a Disney movie years later. But the book itself was something similar to that, right? Where you would have inner city youths that just couldn't, it was almost like a juvenile facility that they would send them to when they did things wrong, of course. And it was like in the middle of nowhere, out in the desert, and they would make them dig holes as punishment. I don't know if you made your kids dig holes, but being out there in the middle of the desert sounds, eerily reminiscent to that. Bill, going a step further, but now honing back in on inspiration. So we know how the writing of the book came about. People were telling you, hey, this is a fantastic story, you should put it out. You ended up writing it, as you said, longhand. Your son got involved, helped you to really increase the entertainment and creative value to it through the writing. What was the underlying message that you wanted your audience to receive, and why did you feel as you were writing this book, your message would be pertinent to youth, to children picking up the book?
Well, when I look back on that experience with everything I've done all around the world, that was probably the biggest learning, growing experience that I had. Those boys taught me more than I ever taught them. What I brought to them was I brought them discipline and I brought them love, right? And I brought them a knowledge of what respect means and how you get it.
Absolutely.
Now, you have to understand, we had nothing out there. There was nothing. There was a dirt road going in, and that was it. There were no toilets. There were no structures. So we didn't dig holes. We built a camp. We cut down the trees. We built the shelters. We built the commode. We built the kitchen. Everything out there we built. It took us probably 6 months to get even running water out there. We used to have to bring it out in 100-gallon sacks. But and I really got attached to these boys, and they really got attached to me. The first 3 months, I don't know how many times they threatened to kill me, or they set a counselor on fire. They had no rules. Their rules were their rules, right?
Yeah, it's the wild, wild
west.
What they
taught me was that if I could be honest with them, if I could be straight with them, because nobody ever had been. These kids didn't have families. They didn't have regular families like we do. They had nothing. Right. They had nobody that ever truly loved them for who they are. And so they were reacting from a very basic animal instinct of survival. You're either for me or you're against me. You're either telling me the truth or you're not. And they could smell a lie 3 miles away.
Right.
And they can take anybody apart just psychologically in 2 minutes. If you don't have a stranglehold on your own personality and your own self-image, they're going to kill you. They're going to eat you alive.
Absolutely. Guys, again, we're here on the line with William J. Pardue. We're discussing his wonderful book that he co-wrote with his son, Patrick Pardue, called Wolf Creek. Available for purchase through Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com. But make sure you check out his personal site, WJP books.com. And just to clarify, I'm saying P is in Peter, books.com. You know, Bill, a question that just came up in my mind, and it's really a curiosity for myself, and I could be completely off in coming out of left field with this, but we know that law wasn't what you initially went to school for.
Right.
Being this camp counselor and working with these kids, you said yourself that, you know, you brought love and respect and you taught them some things, but they taught you a lot as well. Now, I'm curious, Bill, the fact that you are now practicing law, but out of all the law that you could be practicing, you practice family law. Right. Does your background and your experience through your time during your camp counseling, does that play a part in you pursuing law?
Yeah, in terms of what direction. I mean, once I was with the boys for a year, which is how long we spent out in the woods. Mm-hmm. You know, I thought, you know, I want to do this. I want to help people the rest of my life. And that's what I did. And I came from a very rough beginning. You know, I had 3 brothers and fighting all the time. We lived in trailer parks. Dad was gone. So we had to also fight for everything that we got. Mm-hmm. So I found when those boys knew me, they knew I was one of them. I had gone through some of what they had gone through. And because of that, they could cozy up to me a little bit more than they would have otherwise. Mm-hmm. Because we had counselors that didn't have that background. And without a counselor like myself or the partner that I had who was a Vietnam veteran, a paratrooper, Green Beret. Wow. So the 2 of us were taking care of 10 boys. In the other camp, there were also 10 boys over there with 2 counselors taking care of them. But they just inspired me, right? I mean, no matter what had happened to them, no matter how many beatings they had taken, no matter how many foster homes they'd been through, no matter how many dinners they didn't have or places they couldn't go, they knew who they were. They were solid citizens, not solid citizens, but solidly entrenched in who they were. They had to be. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but
yeah, I mean,
I think I can say this mm-hmm. without. I think at the end of it, we all respected each other and we all really loved each other. We were a family.
Right. Absolutely.
And they knew that, and I knew that.
Right. Yeah, Bill, I would absolutely say that you answered the question, because really my main thing is I was wanting to see if there was a connection, if there was an influence through your time as being a camp counselor and then pursuing law, but specific, again, family law, right? So absolutely,
and
thank you.
I did the social work right after the camping experience.
Also, yeah.
I did the social work for 10 years. And so everything I've been involved in has been crisis intervention from the moment I was born, my younger life where I had to grow up at 4 and be an adult, to what I'm doing now. It's all crisis intervention.
Right.
Always has been.
You know, Bill, next question that I wanted to go into, and something that I think we've already started to, but if we have, fine, because I think the message is worth repeating and really doubling down on because it's that important. First and foremost, Bill, who is your intended audience? And B, what is the specific message that you're hoping that they can take and learn from your book?
Well, I think well, let me give you an example, right? Mm-hmm. My older brother, who's 4 or 5 years older than me, and a really kind of a non-emotional person, calls me one night and he's sobbing on the phone. He's literally sobbing. He can barely talk. I said, "What's up?" He said, "I just finished your book."
Wow.
That's the message I want them to take home with them. I want them to live it. They're going to be immersed in this book, and a lot of it is tough stuff to work through. But if you get through it, at the end, you're going to think, oh, my God.
Of course. Yeah. You know, listen, is there a better compliment that a writer can ever receive than to elicit such a visceral emotion? I mean, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah, no. With all of my books, if I have one person that has that emotion, I said it's worth it.
Absolutely. Mission accomplished. Mission accomplished. Because really that's what you want to do, as any artist wants. You want to formulate that bridge with your audience. Whether you're an actor, you're a musician, doesn't matter. Your art form is meant, or at least the majority of artists that I know, and I believe you second this notion, is when you're creating this is you want to connect with your audience. You want to elicit an emotion. And the fact that you were able to accomplish that is incredible, Bill. You know, next question that I want to go into as we start to tie up this wonderful interview, Bill, I would be doing my listening audience a severe disservice if I didn't ask this next question. Now, being that you are someone that has written multiple books, okay, Wolf Creek, again, was today's anchor. But clearly, we know you've written Why God, Visionary Perspectives Reincarnated, A Mystic Guide to Spiritual Evolution. You've done this a number of times. Bill, for any new writers listening in right now, someone just starting out, what are some words of wisdom that you can relay to them?
Well, definitely know your story. Know what you want to write about before you do it. What do you want to do with that book? Do you want to tell a story? Do you want to teach a lesson? I mean, it takes a while. I've written 5 books now, and it takes a while to formulate what you want to do. And my other book here, The Mystic Guide, that was kind of a divine intervention on that one. But you have to be. I mean, this year of my life in the woods with these boys was probably the most important year of my life. And I wasn't gonna. And people like the story, so I said, well, if some people like it, other people will like it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, I know you just mentioned that you have a 5th book that you've also written. Bill, do me a favor, because I have the 4, of course, that are on your website now. This 5th book, is it one that is already published and is out? Is this an earlier book that you've done? Talk to us, A, either about that 5th book, or B, what's upcoming, what's on the horizon and soon to be out by you?
Well, I have not been inspired by anything yet for the last one, but the one I've left out was the very first one I wrote. It was similar to the way I wrote Wolf Creek. I interviewed, there's hypothetical interviews with Freud, Darwin, Mohammed, Confucius. So kind of leading philosophical and scientific leaders, because I've read these books my whole life. And the problem with philosophical books or religious books is they're convoluted.
Right.
So my idea with these guys was I was going to sit down and interview them in my living room and ask them particular questions that they could only answer with a simple answer. And then I took their answers from their books.
I love it.
So just because I think we all need to be exposed to what the human race has thought throughout our entire time on this planet, because there have been some really amazing ideas that people have come up with that help everybody lead a better life and improves the human family.
There you have it. You know, Bill, I'll tell you what, you do put that book out, you already have a fan. My father is probably the most philosophical person I've ever met. And this is something right up his alley. He would absolutely drool over that, right? I mean, that is something that he would love. And I second everything that you're saying, and that does happen, right? When you're having these spiritual, philosophical conversations, it does tend to get convoluted because they're so vast. So many things that come up.
Yeah, I mean, I like to think about my books. I like to have a book I can think about.
There it is. I love it. I love it. People, listen, I'm going to say it for you again, even though I know I don't have to, but let's just tie it up here, okay? We're here on the line once again with William J. Pardue. We're discussing his wonderful book, Wolf Creek, that he co-wrote with his son, Patrick Pardue, all of which are available for purchase through Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, or directly through his personal site, WJPBooks.com. While you're there looking into Wolf Creek, check out his other books as well, Why God, Visionary Perspectives Reincarnated, and lastly, A Mystic Guide to Spiritual Evolution. You surely will not be disappointed with any one of them. Head on over there today, pick up your copies. An even better gift for you to grab for someone else to add to their shelves. So you know where to go. Bill, this has been an absolute pleasure, such an honor. I truly mean that. Thank you once again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
And thank you for being such a good host.
Appreciate you.
Come and be a guest with us on People of Distinction.